Now, this wildfire season has destroyed destroyed hundreds of homes across the country and cost millions. Catherine Bacchus is the Director of Climate Finance and Science at the Intact Centre on Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo, and we've reached her in Burlington, Ontario. Catherine, thank you for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So how is the insurance industry going to adapt to these extreme weather events, wildfires specifically, that are becoming more common in parts of the country?
Of course, well, right now in regards to wildfire insurance, we haven't seen any big shifts or announcements in the Canadian housing market, but we know worst case scenarios that are currently playing out right now in the United States, where certain states are pulling out of all home insurance due to extreme weather events. And so Canada's in a really great position to deploy resources to homeowners and communities to reduce these key physical climate risks, to keep insurance premiums down, and importantly, maintain the insurability of the Canadian housing market.
So Catherine, tell me a little bit more, helping me understand that. So are you concerned that insurance companies are going to begin to refuse coverage in certain area, or they're going to raise insurance rates because of the extreme wildfires that we've been seeing?
I think we can't speak specifically with what there's I think there's approximately 200 insurance companies in Canada, and so we can't speak for all of them. I don't speak for any of them, but I think we can use a few examples of what's actually happening in the market to maybe set projections of what potentially could happen. So we could use flood risk as a template. So historically, flooding has been the most widespread and costliest extreme weather event impacting Canadians. So currently, approximately 10% of the Canadian housing market is uninsurable for flood risk. But what's important to note there is that these homes can still get home insurance, which is incredibly important for the stability of the Canadian housing market, as we need home insurance to buy or sell a home. What we're noticing in the United States, though, is that major insurers in certain states, Florida, Louisiana, California, they've announced that they're no longer going to provide any home insurance policies. So that means no home insurance at all, with one underlying reason being extreme weather events. So if we can assume that the worst case scenario is happening in regards to flooding here in Canada and extreme weather events in the United States, I would assume wildfire will follow suit here in Canada as well.
Okay, and so, earlier you said something about how governments need to kind of intervene or do something about this. Tell me what you mean.
So if we use flooding as an example, with the 10% of the Canadian housing market that is uninsurable for flood risk, meaning no insurance company is offering flood insurance in given regions across Canada. Currently, the federal government is now coming into play with a federal flood insurance program to assist these homeowners to be able to have flood insurance to protect their homes.
This is just really becoming so commonplace. What are the costs of climate change, and how are they changing due to extreme weather?
Of course, well, there's actually no better witness to the costs of climate change than the property and casualty insurance sector, specifically the annual catastrophic insurable losses for Canada. So this is any event, such as a flood, wildfire, hailstorm, that triggers $25 million or more of insured losses. So just to give a little bit of perspective, between 1983 to 2008, losses ranged from approximately $250 to $450 million per year for extreme weather events. From 2009 onward, losses now average approximately $2 billion a year. So as an example, last year, 2022, losses reached $3.1 billion, ranking it the third worst loss year in insured history. And my assumption is that this year is going to beat that. And when we track these costs on a graph, they're actually curvilinear. So the trend of losses is increasing year over year. And what's really important to note is that these are insurable losses. The rule of thumb is multiply those amounts by 3 to 4 times, and what you get is uninsured losses. So that means that that's money coming out of pockets of individuals, businesses, and governments that's not covered by insurance.
So, the whole point is to try and avoid having this happen to your home, right? So what can people do on a personal level or on a community level to try and reduce the risk of these extreme weather events?
Well, Canada's actually in a really great position because we know what to do. The research has been done. We know what to do at the level of the home and community to reduce the risks of physical climate risks in Canada. So as an example, our team at the Intact Centre, we've developed practical, meaningful, and cost-effective one-page infographics on ways to reduce the risk of flooding at the level of the home, wildfire at the level of the home and community, and extreme heat at the level of the home and apartment and condo. So in regards to wildfire, what we know what to do is we need to build structures using fire-resistive building materials, so metal roofs and non-combustible sidings. We need to be building homes further apart so it limits the spread of wildfire. Infrastructure such as power lines should have vegetation such as tree branches cleared within 5 meters of the lines, and where feasible, those supply lines need to be built below the ground. We need a minimum of 30-meter wide zones, so fire breaks, where you have ignition-resistant materials such as mowed grasses, ponds, and roads integrated into community design to limit the spread of wildfire. And we need designated emergency shelters, at least one per community. We need to ensure minimum water supply, and we need to complete emergency training at least annually.
Catherine, that's quite a list. Thank you, though. Appreciate this very much. Catherine Bacchus is the Director of Climate Finance and Science at the Intact Centre on Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo.